And Brandon, let's move on into our next topic before we go ahead and make our picks for week number 6. I'll be completely honest. I looked, the table is not up, the camera is not up, but I pointed my hand at the camera like I usually would, and there's no camera there this week. So I was just pointing at a blank corner of the studio that has no camera in it this week. But you are coming into this segment because, Brandon, we got to do it. We haven't done it in a while, but I guess as the iTunes comment says on our iTunes review, we got to be a couple of good old boys and talk about the SEC. And we're going to take a look at an upcoming matchup coming up this week, actually. The Florida Gators against the LSU Tigers. And, Brandon, I'm just going to be frank and ask you, Florida, they've been on a run of 2 games, I believe, in the last 2. Will they upset LSU and virtually upset the Tigers' college football playoff hopes?
I think Florida has a very good chance to do so. I think that Florida, they have been rolling. They've been very good. And I know that LSU is on a roll. I mean, they've won 5 games in a row. We certainly can't take anything away from them. They beat Miami, number 8 at the time to win that game 1. And are they 8 right now? Is Miami 8 right now, or what were they?
At the time of that loss, what were they? Let's see. If I look at my fancy computer here.
What is Miami now? Miami now is 17. At that time, they were 8. At that time, they were the number 8 team.
Yep, they were.
So they beat Miami, and everyone is, I wouldn't say everyone is shocked, but people are like, wow,
shocked.
This is something. And they beat them handily beat them. So that's something that I think you certainly can't take away from them. 1-point win against Auburn. That's something that you can't take away from them. This LSU team has played very, very well, but I think that you've really got to watch out for this Florida team that has been playing also extremely well. And the reason why Florida won this past week, it certainly was not because of their 13 points of offense. It was because of the defense. It was because of this defense. 6 sacks against Nick Fitzgerald. Nick Fitzgerald gets 98 yards, throws for 98 yards, nothing else. No TDs, no interceptions, nothing. And that is why Florida won the game. And that is why I think that Florida has a good chance to do it this week. And how is Joe Burrow going to be able to handle the pressure that Florida is going to bring? That is going to be the most interesting thing for me this week. He seemed to do fairly well against Auburn in Auburn's front defensive line. How will he fare against Florida?
And I don't mean to say this as like a just kind of douchey remark, but I'm going to say it anyways. You want to know how he handles the pressure of Florida's pass rush? He hands it off to Nick Brossette. That's all he's got to do is hand it on. And the reason why I say that and make that joke is if I am LSU, I'm watching the game tape between the Wildcats and the Gators from earlier this year when Florida was 1-0 coming in, Kentucky was 1-0 coming in. Kentucky gets the win because that was a game where, first off, the defense, you limit Florida's rushing to 128 overall, and their leading rusher is their quarterback with 44. But on offense, it's let's not turn over the ball. Terry Wilson in that game only had 1 INT. And Benny Snell, you mentioned him in our first segment when we brought up Kentucky. He had 175 yards in that one. And they also had Terry Wilson, the quarterback, who had 100 yards of rushing in that one. That is how LSU, to me, has to attack this Florida defense, is they have to have a consistent running attack, because you look at it, the last game that the Tigers had against the Ole Miss Rebels, Joe Burrow, 96 yards on the ground. Brossette, 72 on the ground. You're going to want maybe a little bit more out of Brossette, but that is how you attack it. Or whether it be a Clyde Edwards, who also runs the ball very well. Joe Burrow just needs to hand off the ball. This rushing attack needs to be constant for LSU because whichever defense, because both of these defenses are very, very strong, whichever one of these defenses is on the field more is going to get worn out, and that's the team that is going to lose this game. Whichever team has their defense out on the field for more time than the other one, basically, Ricky, what you can say is win the time of possession and you'll win the game. That's basically the key number one if either Florida or LSU wants to win this weekend.
Well, Ricky, I know that you're kind of saying like it'll be so easy to hand it off to Nick Brossette and he'll just go, but this past weekend, Florida, on 32 carries for Mississippi State, held them to just 104 total yards. Kylan Hill had 9 carries, 41 yards. Nick Fitzgerald had 20 carries, 32 yards. And Eris Williams had 3 carries for 31 yards. So there was nothing special there. They did a really good job of limiting anything offensively for Mississippi State. And this was a Mississippi State Bulldogs team that was at home. So I guess I just am not necessarily convinced that they can hand it off to Nick Brossette and he'll just run wild against them. And I know that's one game to look at for Florida, but at the same time, I think that that's kind of where the Gators are. They're playing some really good defense, and it'll be interesting to see how offensively they'll be able to do against LSU. But Joe Burrow, while he has not turned the football over, he's been really good. I don't think he's thrown any interceptions this season. Is he going to be able to step up and make some big plays? This is when's it going to be his time, Ricky? That's kind of what I'm wanting to try and get at. Is okay, yes, you can hand the ball off to your running back. Yes, you can do that. But like we talked about that Penn State game against Ohio State, you want that ball, if you're Penn State, to be in the hands of Trace McSorley. If you're LSU, I mean, you want the ball to be in the hands of your quarterback to make a big play for you, to make multiple big plays for you. Is Joe Burrow there? Is he able to do that? Is he going to be able to do that in a big game here against Florida? And that's what I want to be able to see. That's where then I can maybe start to have some full confidence in what Joe Burrow will be able to do, not in just this game, but going forward. That's the biggest thing, because you can hand the ball off. I could be in there, you could be in there, Ricky, and hand off the ball to Nick Brossette. But you eventually, they would have to pull me if they wanted a big play from the quarterback position. I probably wouldn't be able to do that. You probably wouldn't be able to do that. Is Joe Burrow able to do that?
I don't know, man. Back in the old pickup football days, I had a cannon on me, and I could unleash the Rex Grossman dragon if I wanted to. So I mean, if you have a big play, you put the young kid in there, and I go, well, I'm not young anymore, but you put the kid in there, and I show you what I got from my arm. But for me,
I'm glad you still have confidence in yourself, buddy.
I do.
I'm really happy to know your confidence is unshattered.
I do. I mean, give me a football, and I'll just launch it on you guys. But the thing I look at is the defenses in this game, because you look at LSU, the most points they have given up in a game is 21. They gave up 21 to Auburn. They also gave up 21 to Louisiana Tech. You look at Florida, their defense has only given up the most points, 21, to Tennessee when they were in Knoxville. Now, the thing is, which defense is going to be more dominant in my mind? Because let's say Florida holds LSU to about 21, 22 points. All right, Auburn did that, and LSU was still able to get the win. I think that, there's either two ways this game goes for me. Either option A is it's exactly like the Auburn-LSU game, where it's two staunch defenses, and then LSU's offense is just better than Florida's, and they win the game by a point or by a field goal, by a very close margin, basically. Or option B, LSU kind of runs away with it a little bit and wins by 10 or 14 points because their defense is able to hold Florida to 13, 21 points, and Florida's defense is not able to hold LSU to just the 21 points that has been their most. And that's what I look at. It goes back to the time of possession thing, because whichever defense is on the field more, but that's the big question is what game are we going to get? Is it going to be a staunch defensive game, much like LSU Auburn? Kind of, you could also say like Kentucky and Florida too, although Kentucky did win by 11, which that would be closer to option B. I'll say that. Will it be option A, which is Auburn, LSU, or are we going to get an option B where the score is more 27-16 in lieu of Kentucky and Florida that we saw earlier in the year?
Yeah, Ricky, this past weekend when Joe Burrow played against Ole Miss, he threw for 292 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he added a rushing touchdown as well on almost 100 yards. That's a great game from Joe Burrow, and I don't want to take anything away from him. And I don't want people who are LSU fans to say, Brandon, you're saying that he's never made a big play. You blew them out 45-16. He probably didn't need to do any of that, and you would still win.
Mm-hmm.
What I am saying is, while I don't think that he's going to have those numbers, because I don't think that either side offensively will have those types of numbers from the quarterback. If they do, we are going to see a blowout and certainly not an evenly played game. But what I do wonder is, can he have that play, that throw, stuff like that you look at and you go, those are the instincts of a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
What he did in the Auburn game, on the road at Auburn, 15 of 34, his completion percentage was 44%. Now, he had 249 yards and a touchdown with no interception. That was fine. That got them the win because he didn't turn the football over, and he was able to throw for a score. He needs to be able to repeat numbers similar to that. He cannot turn the football over. He cannot fumble. No interceptions, because either team is going to take advantage of that. This is going to be a very close game. I would really not be surprised if we had a similar type of game come down to the wire like it did in that Auburn LSU game, because these teams are scoring just about the same amount of points a game.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving up just about the same amount of points per game. LSU, I think, is a 2-point favorite in this game. I could see that easily swing over to the other side for Florida, or have it be Florida a 1-point favorite. I could see that. I can see LSU being the 2-point favorite right now. They're 5-0. They've been rolling, but Florida's been rolling. If this is not a close game, if this is not a defensive battle, I'll be surprised. I really don't see either offense breaking out and breaking loose in this one. I just don't see it because of how both defenses are and have been this season. But I think we're going to see a very good game. But I do also, talking about defense, switch to offense and say it's going to be the team that makes that 1 or 2 big offensive plays that gets the win. That's what it's going to be. While defense is going to be a huge part of it, I think the biggest thing will be the team that makes that big play in that crucial moment in the ball game. And I'm not even saying it's going to be a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a huge third down pass. Maybe it's a big third down run. It's a fourth down run. It doesn't have to be. When I say a big play, I think people probably think, oh, he's talking about a 75-yard touchdown. It could be a 7-yard conversion.
Convert on 4th and 5
to make it. That's a big play in a ball game. It doesn't need to be a big touchdown score. It may just need to be the big play at the right time, and that's who's going to win this game. And if it comes down to it, where there's a big fumble or a big interception at a crucial moment, well, there you go too. So that's who it's going to go to. This type of game, I don't see a blowout. I don't predict one. I don't think that'll happen.
So I'm going to make a NFL comparison for the Joe Burrow thing to try to hammer the point, and you can tell me if I'm getting it or if I'm completely off with it. So basically it's Joe Burrow, what are you going to be when the time comes and you need to make a play? Are you going to be like the Tom Brady's and the Big Bens who have made plays? Or, and I might sound like a little bit of Sean here because I know how Sean feels about this quarterback, or are you just going to be like a game manager like a Alex Smith or a Kirk Cousins, where it's like, hey, you got good stats, but you didn't make that legendary play like a Tom Brady or a Big Ben would have?
No, I think that's a bit of a knock to Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins. I don't think that they're that bad, but yes, that's basically what I'm getting at. Is that, you know, are you going to be able to make that crucial play in that crucial moment, and that's where a Joe Burrow will. That's where he'll earn his stripes. You know, I mean that's how you do it. That's exactly how you do it. It's being able to, you know, get up for those big moments and you know, be calm and cool under pressure. That's what it's all about. And I think that we're going to see probably a number of those moments in a game like this, because it's an SEC game. It's certainly two teams that are fighting right now for a spot, because Florida, while they're not very high right now on the list in the playoff picture anywhere right now, I think that, you know, legitimately these two teams are fighting for that spot. LSU is fighting to keep their spot as they are number 5 right now, and that looks really good for them. But I think Florida, if things possibly go south for Georgia, and Kentucky, you know, goes back to being the Kentucky people thought they would be, and Florida is able then to fly up to the top, that's big. That's big for them. And then for LSU, they're trying to keep pace with Alabama, and they're in front of Auburn right now, and they would certainly have the tiebreaker with Auburn if anything came down to it. So this is a big game early in the season, week 6, but early in the season and a crucial game.
Let me ask you this then. Let's turn the focus on to if Florida wins. Let's say Florida wins this weekend. What do you think happens to LSU's playoff hopes? Because right now, kind of to set the picture, in the top 25 rankings, which I know are vastly different than the committee's rankings, LSU is number 5. They are above teams like Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and then Auburn. If they lose, it might not be hey, LSU is done, because they still have games against Georgia coming up just next week. They have games against Alabama coming up later this year. But if they lose to Florida this week and go to then 2-1 in the SEC, even though their playoff hopes might not truly be done, are they then kind of, when it comes to the playoffs, and can forget making the playoff?
If LSU loses this week, they are done. And the reason being is because I do not see them getting through Georgia and Alabama and going 2-0 against those teams. I don't see it. Maybe they don't lose both of them, but I don't see them winning both of them. So if LSU loses this weekend, they are cooked, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be completely honest. Even if they do win this game, I know we talked way earlier in the season. I think it was like right before week 2, right after they had that I'm going to say shocking win over Miami, because I didn't expect them to come out and beat the Hurricanes. I know it was also, I didn't expect the Hurricanes to be that bad this year, but I was kind of shocked that LSU beat Miami like they did. I don't think they beat both. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that could get really interesting is the fact that if they do win this weekend, hope is still alive and things are looking really good. And then let's say they beat Georgia and their one loss would come to Alabama. Let's say that's what happens. Well, then they've screwed Georgia out of a spot. They've screwed Auburn out of a spot. And it could then be Alabama, and then the team that everyone was expecting to be from the other team from the SEC, because right now people are thinking, Alabama, and it'll be Georgia again. But that could be completely thrown out the window, And the surprise team could be LSU. I mean, that's what they could be doing, or they could be opening up that door even more for an undefeated Oklahoma team. So a lot of things could be happening in the next 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, also, too, like you brought up Oklahoma, I think if, let's say, they play spoiler to a Georgia team, even if they do lose this week, they could play spoiler to a Georgia team and open the door for a Kentucky team to get into the SEC championship. Or let's say they beat Georgia. Georgia's the only, like, that's the only team that Georgia loses to is LSU. Then Georgia could get back into the title hope with the, hey, we can beat Alabama in the title game. But if they beat Georgia, and then Georgia, they got some tough opponents after that. Like, after they play LSU, they play this same Florida team. They play Kentucky, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast. They play Auburn in a tough 4-game stretch. They could basically set up that 4-game stretch of like, oh, man, now we really need to win these games, because if we lose one more, then we're kaputs and probably won't even win our side of the SEC as well. So there's a lot to be going on. I know LSU, expect us to talk about them next week too, because depending on what happens in this one, next week they also have a big game on the schedule, as they will play, or no, it's not this week, it's in 2 weeks. No, it is next week, where they'll play, it's next Friday, they'll play LSU. So LSU and Georgia will go head-to-head next week. So it's, yet again, expect us a week from now to be talking again about LSU, because they'll have a big primetime game, and it could stay as number 2 v number 5 next week if LSU wins this one. I'm not going to ask you who wins with Florida and LSU, because we'll make those in our picks. But any final thoughts before we move into said picks for week number 6?
I'm just really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a really fun weekend of college football all the way around.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section about LSU and Florida. What could happen if Florida plays upset in this one? What will that do to LSU's college football playoff hopes? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.